Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show, Thursday, October 8th. 4-game slate, but we don't know most of the pitching, which is fun. We have no idea who the favorites and the underdogs are, which is fun. I don't understand how this is the playoffs. It feels more like spring training because we have very little information, but we're going to take a shot at it anyway. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. Still just kind of confused by what's going on with baseball today. It's a 4-game playoff slate, and is there a single pitcher that you expect to throw 100 pitches if they're pitching well?
Probably not. I loaded everybody up. Fangraphs has 2 guys as, probable long relievers. I was just like, okay, so he'll throw 4 innings and he'll throw 4 innings and he'll throw 4 innings. And okay, everybody's the same. It's not fun.
Yeah, the most expensive pitching options we have are Julio Urias, who pretty much never throws 100 pitches. Frankie Montas, who was kicked out of the starting rotation, and Sixto Sanchez, who, whatever. He stretched out, but it's Sixto Sanchez against the Braves. I don't know. It's really, really weird for a playoff slate.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't understand how it happens. I don't understand how we don't have lines at this point in time.
I just don't understand how it all lines up on the same day.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Well, we don't have much of a choice. I think we need to just dive into this bad boy because, what else are we going to do? They're great slates. That's the problem. 4-gamer, the spread out times isn't ideal, but it's a nice balanced 4-gamer. It is some consistency.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying
a bit more information baseball.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's just, it's weird. It's like if you had back, when we were in the first round of the playoffs, if it was just like all the coaches came out the same day and we're just like, yeah, so we're just going to run, pretty loose rotations today and kind of just limit our guys and try and get through the game. That's what this feels like.
Well, at the very least, shout out to Yahoo for being the presenting sponsor of this show. We'll touch on them in a little bit. Happy to have them up top. I'm pulling up the top pitchers report. I'm pulling up top stacks, pulling up our ownership projections for the slate, which are tenuous at best for right now, considering our knowledge of the starting pitchers, but we don't have a choice. We got to look at it. It's important right now, and that's what we'll do. So ownership, good for DraftKings. Ownership, good for FanDuel. Let's dive in. The Atlanta Braves and the Miami Marlins. Braves, 4.6 run implied total. Marlins, 4. Those numbers are actually real. It's very nice to know that those two teams actually have a line out so far. Kyle Wright going for the Braves, Sixto Sanchez going for the Marlins. Given that they are 2 pitchers that we know are pitching, they are also soaking up a ton of ownership. Kyle Wright, 53%, Sixto Sanchez, 44%. What are you doing with pitching in the Braves-Marlins game?
I think you have to be looking at it pretty hard because it's 2 guys that are actually starters at least. Yeah. Sixto Sanchez, his last time out was October 2nd against the Cubs through 89 pitches. Kyle Wright's last appearance was September 25th through 79 pitches, 98 the game before that. These guys are at least both stretched out and at least have the opportunity to give you 90 to 100 pitches if they're pitching well. Wright obviously has the better matchup against Miami, but isn't as exciting a pitcher from a DFS standpoint. Sixto with the tougher matchup against the Braves, but has the better strikeout stuff. I think that you really have to be looking pretty hard at these guys just because we at least know that they're capable of giving you 5 to 6 innings.
Yeah, they both grade out pretty well for me. I gave Kyle Wright just shy of 5 innings. I gave Sixto Sanchez 5 innings. That seemed even that feels like a lofty goal. Because there's no reason that he needs to be out there. You can pretty much roster anybody from a pitching perspective, and that's why you see their ownership going crazy. Even if you ignoring the correlation of having pitchers from the same game, and if you want to do that or not, these guys together are $7,600 on average. You can have whatever you want, even if you just start with these 2 guys, and then there are plenty of other options to go that'll keep that similar. Do you think your outlook changes based on any of the future starters we get in the games that are a little ambiguous? Do you think it matters at all?
It doesn't. I don't think Houston will matter. They don't have anybody that could matter unless Greinke goes, but I don't think that's going to be the case. If they say Greinke's going to go, then I guess that changes it a little bit. But even then, you would have concerns over if he's actually healthy or not. But assuming it's not Greinke, I don't think there's anybody on the Astros that changes anything. The Dodgers, I guess, could change stuff. They don't actually have a listed starter right now either. I think the assumption is that it's Julio Urias, which would give you an actual starter. If they do something different, go to a bullpen game, then it's going to make Sixto and Wright look even better.
So Fangraphs for the Astros, since we're talking about it, we're going to have to look sort of bounce around a little bit. They have Christian Javier in.
Yeah, that's my assumption, is that it'll be Javier. He threw 25 pitches on Monday. The quote in The Athletic from Dusty Baker was essentially that whoever they decide to start will have to give them as many innings as they can because their bullpen is basically dead. Like, if you look at their bullpen usage, basically they have, and I'm trying to double check to make sure that these guys are actually on the playoff roster. But they have, so they basically have Javier, who threw 25 pitches on Monday, which isn't a big deal, but I don't think he's likely to go deep into a game. Luis Garcia hasn't pitched, and Cy Snead hasn't pitched. I think that you could see some combination of those guys. My guess is that Javier gets the start and goes a couple of innings, and then try and get it to the back end of the bullpen. But it's probably Javier. I just don't think that he really goes deep.
I agree. I have Javier in. I don't have him pitching particularly long, but he is in there. It's amazing. In a year where you actually have an extra active roster player in the playoffs, it's even worse than normal.
Yeah. And as far as Javier goes, I mentioned he threw the 25 pitches on the 5th. September 30th, he threw 54 pitches. I would guess that you're getting 3 to 4 innings if he pitches well.
Yeah. He grades out solid for me if he goes 4. But we'll dig into that in a little bit. Let's transition over to the offenses. Braves and Marlins. If I pull up the top stacks tool for today, Atlanta second, just a little bit behind Oakland. Oakland and Atlanta outpacing everybody pretty solidly. Atlanta showing up as owned as they should be, basically neutral for their ownership share and their top stack odds. So let's start with the Braves since they're second. How do you feel about Atlanta as a stack today?
Good. I mean, Sixto is, I guess, one of the better pitchers on the slate just because of the lack of other talented pitchers. He has good strikeout stuff, but he is still, unproven at the major league level. His strikeout numbers have been a lot better against lefties than righties. He hasn't really given up much power to either side, only a .078 expected ISO to lefties, 137 to righties. So all that stuff looks pretty good. But at the same time, you do still have a lot of power in this Atlanta lineup. They also are an appealing stack because they give you a catcher that has power and is in a prime batting position. Same goes for shortstop with Dansby Swanson, two positions that are generally kind of difficult to fill. So they're appealing in that regard as well. And then you also get some leverage because there's going to be so much ownership going to Sixto Sanchez by default. So it's definitely a spot where I'm interested in both sides. I fully recognize that Sanchez is one of the better pitching options, but at the same time, the Braves are still a really good offensive team.
Yeah, I actually have the Braves 5th. I'm a little bit less enamored with them compared to the top stack tool, compared to their current ownership. Now, Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna, they all look great regardless. They're just quality hitters. But d'Arnaud picking up 30% ownership, I mean, I understand why it's happening. I think that it's a bit too aggressive. I don't need 30% of him tonight. I thought Zunino would play yesterday. Don't believe that he did. And then he's in the potential starting lineup for today. It's another guy that I would like to go to 3,300. If I'm just trying to buy a home run, I'll take the 27% ownership discount or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning that there's catching, like the 8 teams left. Not all of them, but most of them do actually have catchers that can hit a little bit. So yeah. It has been. I agree. It's kind of like d'Arnaud he's a good play, obviously, but his ownership has been a little higher than I think it should be when you consider that, Will Smith has power, Mike Zunino has power, Gary Sanchez, when he's in the lineup, has power. It's not as bad a position as it could be.
Exactly. Favorite Braves bet. Call it favorite Braves bet cash, favorite Braves bet GPP.
I think so. I mean, cash, I guess to start. No.
Yeah, that's fine.
GPP, probably Freeman. I think that you probably just get a little bit lower ownership on Freeman than Acuna just because of positions.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. We're on the same page there. Switch over to the Marlins side. Marlins, a little bit less optimistic about their stack odds. They are second from the bottom, 9% chance of being the top stack on DraftKings, 11.6% ownership share. They are an optimizer's dream because they are so cheap. So they could potentially pick up a lot of love that way. But all of their ownership is basically going to 2.5 guys, Dickerson and Birdie, with a little bit going to Aguilar. Do you want to stack up the Marlins against some pretty heavy Kyle Wright exposure?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a decent spot because I was going to say, if you hadn't mentioned it, but you did, with as cheap as they are, that's something that we point to a lot as, they'll show up as stacks and optimizers. But without pitching to pay up for it today, I think you're going to see them not show up as stacks and optimizers. You're going to see them show up as one-offs and two-offs because you'll use like Corey Dickerson for value and then stack some actually good offensive team. Yeah. So having a full Miami stack might be a little bit more contrarian than just going to, a couple of the guys that are cheap at the top. Kyle Wright, not particularly good. This season, he's allowed a 256 expected ISO to lefties, 200 to righties, sub 20% strikeout percentage to both sides of the plate. So all that stuff looks good. Mm-hmm. And it is a ballpark upgrade being outside of Miami. So I think all that looks good. It's still the Marlins. They're still the worst offensive team in the playoffs. But, you are getting ownership going to Kyle Wright. You are getting favorable pricing for whatever that's worth. As an aside, I kind of want your thoughts on it. So I know someone had asked on a show a couple of days ago how we were approaching stacking in the playoffs. And I said that I hadn't really changed my approach too much, but I thought it was at least something to consider. I have noticed some pretty good players stacking less. And it really is something I'm considering on this particular slate because there's so much salary flexibility. I don't think that stacking has quite as much merit because part of the reason why stacking is so good is that typically you have to roster some less than good hitters to get to the pitching you want. And so it makes sense to correlate them with the rest of your lineup. If you're forcing stacks today, I think there's going to be spots where you're just forcing guys that you really don't want to be playing at price points that you could just roster a much better play. So I'm considering not doing it, at least to the same extent that I normally do today.
Yeah, I think having like the 2 stacks in a lineup is probably a little bit less than what you need now. So like a 5 naked should be fine. Even like a 4 naked, I think, is probably fine.
I've been seeing people doing 3s and 4s.
Yeah, or like, the typical FanDuel 4-4 seems wildly aggressive now.
Right.
I would be much more likely to go to something like 3-3 or just 4 naked.
Yeah,
either
and
direction.
I think it's more appealing on FanDuel still too, just because there is the heavier weight on runs and RBIs.
Yeah.
But like thinking about DraftKings, you already mentioned, like if you start with Sixto Sanchez and Kyle Wright, you basically can do whatever you want with the rest of your lineup. If you're forcing 5-man stacks, let's say, I'll pick a team, but like, let's say the Yankees. Okay. So you're going to get to the good part of the Yankees lineup. And then it's going to give you like, let's say Brett Gardner at 3,100 when you could just roster Chris Davis at 3,400 or Corey Dickerson at 3K. Like there's no real reason, especially on DraftKings where home runs are more important, that you would actually prefer Brett Gardner to be in the lineup.
Right. We're on the same page there. I would lean more towards stacking less in these scenarios than stacking more.
Yeah.
And it also, the slate size matters too. It's a different discussion when it's a 4-gamer compared to when you're playing a 13-game slate.
When you have 26 offenses going, there's a much better chance that someone scores 10 runs than when you have 8 teams going.
Absolutely.
Also, I guess, just kind of on that same train of thought, even though the pitching today is less than appealing in terms of talent, I think it is worth keeping in mind that you're getting a lot of bullpen games, which really aren't favorable for hitters. Right. Like you're just seeing different matchups constantly. So it's a lot harder, I think, to pinpoint like, oh, this team's in a great spot because the pitcher is going to change after one time through the order.
Not only are you just seeing different pitchers, but you're likely seeing your better hitters not getting like profitable to them matchups. You're gonna rarely see Freddie Freeman facing a righty in a high leverage situation. You're gonna just jam Freddie Freeman with a lefty, and that's just going to be it if it needs to happen. Where during the regular season, you don't have to sort of play those individual games. All right, favorite Marlins bat, GPP and cash.
Corey Dickerson, probably Corey Dickerson.
Yeah, I mean, there are only real, like, the cash option is Dickerson or Birdie. I don't think that there's much option. It's probably, honestly, because of his dual eligibility, it's probably Birdie for second base, or at least kind of close to it. For a GPP, you could talk me into Aguiar at 3,100 for a first base option.
Brian Anderson's actually been grading out well for me as a tournament play recently.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not someone I've been getting
$3,800 third base.
Yeah, it's not someone I've been getting to a lot, but it's that you get a lot of ownership going to Alex Bregman at third base, and people use Chad Pinder as the value at third base, so that's a lot of ownership there. Basically, it's just that you have a guy in Anderson that is a pretty decent hitter and just gets no ownership.
133 concurrent viewers, only 20 likes. That seems to be a little light. So, YouTube chat, where you at on this one? Hit that thumbs up, helps us out a ton. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you get all of our content. Subscribe to the podcast feeds too. So if you don't want to see our ugly mugs, you can just listen to the audio. Anything else for Braves Marlins?
I don't think so, no.
All right, time to start a guessing game. Astros and A's. I made up a line based on the Fangraphs probabilities here. Fangraphs has the Astros as a slight favorite, so I made them a slight favorite as well. But it's a coin flip, all things considered. And I'm going to go with the assumption of Christian Javier for the Astros, Frankie Montas for the A's. I think you're going the same assumption. I gave Javier 4 innings.
Yeah, that seems fine. Like, I think he probably goes through the order once, maybe a couple guys twice. Yeah.
And in those scenarios, like, if he just mowed down 9 straight batters pretty efficiently, he's more likely to see the 4th and the 5th.
Right.
If he, gets into a little bit of trouble or just like walks a guy or two and picks up pitches, that number is going to come in a little bit lower. Playoff baseball, a little bit different. Do you like him? I mean, we don't have any ownership on him right now, so it's impossible to know. We've got Jordan Montgomery at 72% ownership. When these guys show up, those numbers are going to change pretty dramatically. Let's just say that he is there at 7,700. Where does he rank accordingly?
Right. My first thought when I saw his price was this doesn't really matter because he's 7,700 and he's just irrelevant at that price if you're expecting like 3 to 4 innings. But then when you look in the context of the entire slate, there's a really good chance that if you get like 12, 13 points from your pitcher on DraftKings that you're in good shape. And my assumption, obviously we don't have the numbers yet, but my assumption is that his ownership is going to be relatively low since he hasn't even been named the starter and there's legitimate concerns over his pitch count. So I think like you're going to prefer Sanchez at a little bit more. You're going to prefer Wright at less. It's going to keep his ownership down, but it's so easy for either of those guys to fail that especially in large field tournaments, I don't think there's really much wrong with just rostering different pitchers than the field today and hoping that you win like 12 to 10 or something.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any pitcher that's going to break this slate. So ownership becomes a lot more, it becomes a lot easier to worry about ownership there than like yesterday, for example, where you had Ian Anderson in a prime spot at a good salary. And it was just like, yeah, he's going to be popular and there's nothing I can do about it.
This feels like a day where we probably get one pitcher that ends up being super necessary, or at least the most necessary. And then everybody else is just sort of different flavors of meh.
Yeah. So I don't think that there will be any pitcher that is more important than bats today.
Agreed.
Like, I don't think there'll be any pitcher that's just like, oh man, I don't have X. I can't win this tournament. Like yesterday, it'll
only matter if somebody has really crazy ownership.
Right. Like yesterday, you were in a lot of trouble if you didn't have 30 points from Ian Anderson.
Yeah.
I doubt that's the case today. I think there's probably a pitcher where it's like, yeah, he did a lot better than everyone else. But I think that assuming offenses do well, or do normal, I think bats are just going to be more important.
Assuming it's Javier and Montas, do you have a preference between the two?
Javier, I guess, because he's a little bit cheaper. I think there's a little bit more strikeouts in the Oakland lineup. Montas, as much as I thought he was going to have a breakout year this year, really, really struggled. And Houston doesn't strike out a lot. Montas also more expensive. I would expect that if he pitches well, Montas can go deeper into the game. But I also assume that Oakland's idea going into this game is, please God, let Frankie Montas give us 5 innings, not blow this game, and we can get to the bullpen.
Yeah, I would also lean that same direction. So let's just slide over to the hitting, and we'll start by taking a peek at the top stacks tool. That would be Oakland at the top, 19.4% chance of being the top stack, only a 13.5% ownership share. So they're showing up as under-owned. We need to start with Oakland. Do you agree Oakland as the top stack? Do you feel the ownership is beneficial to you?
It seems kind of aggressive, but yeah. I mean, they are a good offensive team. We have seen the ball flying in that series. So it's not crazy to me. It's just a little higher than I expected.
I don't have them as high. They are 4th for me. Pretty much everybody is smushed together too. So the difference between 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is essentially nothing. So I think that they're probably more like properly owned instead of under-owned. Like, I think the ownership represents what they should be. We'll see as we get a little bit further ahead, because the top stack odds will also depend sort of, and like the value of those top stacks will depend a little bit on who these pitchers are that show up and how much they are and what they're projected for. It's all, symbiotic. So let's talk a little bit about Oakland. We've got Marcus Semien picking up a ton of ownership. Tommy La Stella, Chad Pinder, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, all showing up somewhere in the teens area. Who's your favorite Oakland bat right now?
Matt Olson. Javier's biggest issue this year was left-handed power. He allowed a 239 ISO, 195 expected ISO to lefties, and struck out 8 percentage points fewer lefties than righties, 21.6% of lefties compared to 30% of righties. The real left-handed power bat in this lineup is Matt Olson, potentially the only left-handed power bat, because Tommy La Stella was hit on the elbow yesterday, left the game. So don't know if he'll even be in. There's a decent chance that Olson's really the only lefty here, but either way, he grades out as the best.
4% owned Chris Davis. Any thoughts?
I'm fine with it. He's still cheap. But yeah, I mean, Olson stands out. The thing with Oakland, and we saw it yesterday, it started out really well for me, and then it went downhill really quickly. The top of this order is getting a lot of ownership because they're really cheap and they have power. The bottom of the order is essentially being left alone. Yesterday in the $150 3 max on DraftKings, Pinder was, I think, 38% owned. Chris Davis was 25%. Semien was 21%. La Stella was like 6. Olson was, I think, 7. Cano was 4. Piscotty was 2. Like, the cheap guys, particularly Pinder and Davis, the cheap guys are just getting so much ownership, and they're not any better than most of the hitters, any of the hitters really in this lineup. So that is something to be aware of. Like, if you're going to Oakland, you can normally be contrarian by just avoiding those two and hoping that, Pinder isn't the highest scoring hitter on the slate again.
Chad Pinder's price is so stupid.
It's really, really dumb. But I kind of like it for tournaments because, I mean, it's obviously worked out terribly the last couple of days because he's homered in every game. But I kind of like when you get these free squares that you don't really need in tournaments. Like, there's nothing – your lineup is just as good if you take Pinder and like a $5,500 hitter as if you take two, $4,400 hitters, more or less. And you just get so much ownership going to the really cheap guy. I kind of like it in tournaments, just only when the guy doesn't score 25 points.
It's amazing to see the same ownership on Pinder and La Stella, the exact same positional splits, only La Stella is $2,600 more expensive.
We have the same ownership on Pinder and La Stella?
16 La Stella, 15 Pinder.
Maybe because there's not expensive pitching. I don't know. Yesterday it was 40-6.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's got to be pretty hard to get those two guys to be the same. I think they have relatively similar projections, all things considered. Yeah. $2,600 is like a full other player.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I guess when there's no Kershaw, there's no Anderson.
Yeah.
We don't need, we probably didn't even have Urias in on this run, I don't think. So
yeah. Well, yeah. What that's telling you is that salary is largely irrelevant.
Right.
Because that's not at all how that
which illustrates the point perfectly that we were talking about with stacking. Like if you can play Chad Pinder just as easily as you can play a $4,600 hitter and it doesn't matter, why are you really favoring the cheap guy just because he's on the same team when you could roster like a legitimate home run hitter?
There's no reason.
Not saying Tommy La Stella is the legitimate home run hitter, just saying like you can go to a different game.
would really help if Tommy La Stella was a better power hitter for that example, but I know where you're going with it.
Right.
Let's slide over to the Astros side. Springer, Altuve, Bregman, all north of 20% ownership. Kyle Tucker, Michael Brantley, just shy of it. No real ownership coming in anywhere else. How do you feel about the Astros? Houston coming in pretty low, less than 10% chance of being the top stack, 14% ownership share. How are you feeling about Houston? I have them ranked 6th, so I'm not like super excited.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to be low owned, though, I'm interested just because it's still Houston. They, still have good hitters. Montas is, pretty questionable. He did a good job against righties this year, which I think is a concern for Houston. He struck out 29%. He only allowed a 117 ISO. His real issues came with left-handed hitters. 251 expected ISO, 280 actual ISO, only struck out 21.5%. So I think Michael Brantley looks like a good value. Not that you need the value, but it's a good price point. Kyle Tucker, I think, looks really good. Maybe some issues with the rest of the lineup, but I'm not overly concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm like Springer, clearly my top option in the leadoff spot, 4,800, only 21% owned. So like if La Stella is going to get that same sort of ownership at the exact same price point, I'm just going to try to buy these better hitters, all things considered. Do you like anything at the bottom of the Astros lineup? Does that make it any more appealing to stack for you? Are you trying to get to like the Gurriel, Reddick, Maldonado section?
Not really today. I just don't see the point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't either. Favorite GPP play, favorite cash play from the Astros?
I love Kyle Tucker.
Just in general?
Yeah.
All formats?
Yeah. I mean, all formats. Like probably not a cash play just because there's going to be 3 outfield. Like you're going to probably play, Acuna, Dickerson,
Stanton,
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So not a cash play for that reason, but I mean Springer probably I guess would be ahead of him in cash too. But I love Tucker in tournaments. I think that Altuve is probably a good cash play. Obviously haven't built a lineup, so don't say it with too much confidence. But like if you're not paying down for Birdie at second base, Altuve is probably where you're going.
Big day of content here at Awesemo.com. Coming up immediately after this, 11 a.m. NFL strategy show. Laffy and Matt breaking it all down at 1 p.m. MLB live before lock. Baseball's coming back. It's going to be Jake and Terry taking you all the way up to the 2:08. Which is such a weird start time, but whatever. The 2:08 lock. And then 2 p.m. Eastern time, or maybe just after the live before lock show ends, FanDuel NFL strategy. So FanDuel specific show, Matt and Kyle. And then Kyle coming back again, 7:20 p.m. Eastern time, NFL live before lock with the boss man, Alex Baker, and the aforementioned Kyle. They will be breaking it all down. I've got 2 showdown videos, FanDuel and DraftKings, that are either up now or will be out relatively soon, breaking down the showdown slate for both sites. Check those things out and check out the free content we have. NFL showdown rankings are free today. So if you're trying to play tonight's NFL showdown between the Bucks and the Bears, I almost forgot because, well, it's the Bears and I don't care. It's not all that fun. And who knows what's going to happen with the Bucks if Mike Evans ends up not playing. But this is an MLB show, and you guys aren't worried about it. Showdown ranks are free. MLB projections are free today. So if you are trying to play this MLB slate, and if you're listening to the show, I'm guessing you probably are, our projections are free today. Are free today. Too many words, man. Too early. Need more coffee. Let's move on to game number 3, a game with an actual line, I think. Or is the other one the one that has the line? Yes, this one does have a line. Yankees, 5-run implied total, Rays 4.5. 55% chance to win for the Yanks. Jordan Montgomery going for New York. Depends how you want to talk about this one. Ryan Thompson as the opener. Ryan Yarborough as the long man per Fangraphs. Jordan Montgomery is projected for 72% ownership on DraftKings right now. That is not going to hold when we get our additional pitchers in. But we need to start there because at the very least, he's going to get ownership. How do you feel about Jordan Montgomery?
I like him. I think I like him a little bit more than Kyle Wright. I just think he's a better pitcher.
Yeah.
I think his strikeout stuff's better. If you look at, obviously somewhat limited sample this year, but 24.4% strikeout percentage for Montgomery, 18% for Wright. And Montgomery's someone that in the past I've been pretty high on because he does have multiple pitches that can get swings and misses and that he can use to get guys out. So I am interested in Montgomery. Again, I don't think he goes super deep into this game, not because he's not stretched out. I just expect that the Yankees, if he can give them like 5 innings, the Yankees probably take what they got and then, turn it over to the bullpen. But I think that his salary is affordable. I think the matchup's okay. The Rays, obviously have some power, but outside of really Miami, every team in the playoffs still has power. So I think it's one of the better matchups, possible on this slate. So I do think Montgomery looks good. I'm hoping the ownership comes down a little bit.
I have him grading out as my best option right now. I have all of the pitchers that I assume are going to be pitching. Jordan Montgomery would be the tops in that scenario. So barring any really crazy ownership, like barring that 72% holding once these guys come in, I think that Montgomery would be my favorite arm. Thoughts on Ryan Yarbrough, 6,800. Obviously, price is largely not important today. Do you think Yarbrough can go deep enough at that price tag to matter?
To matter, yeah. It's kind of similar to what we talked about with Christian Javier. On most slates, I would say no, because I expect him to give you 4 or 5 innings. But on this slate, he can. The bigger issue is that he's facing the Yankees, and that's a pretty tough thing to do. Of course, he's not pitching in Tropicana, which doesn't help. So it's not that I'm certainly not excited to get to Yarbrough, but I don't think there's a drastic difference in the range of outcomes between Yarbrough and Kyle Wright, for example. So, if his ownership is significantly lower, then there's no reason not to consider him in tournaments.
Same page there, that's for sure. Man, I used to like rostering Ryan Yarbrough. Like there was a time where it was fun. There was a time when people weren't rostering the long relievers correctly.
I was going to say that's when it was fun. Was like you knew Yarbrough was going to pitch, and everyone just pretended that they didn't know.
Yeah, he'd be like 1.5% owned, and if they named him as the starter, he would have been 30. The good old days of 2 years ago. All right, let's slide over to the Yankees bats. I think that is probably the better place to start in this game. Pulling up the top stacks tool again. Yankees are third, 14% chance of being the top stack. They're outpacing their ownership a little bit. I have the Yankees as my number 1 stack. Should not be all that surprising given the amount of power that's there. How do you feel about the Yanks?
I have a lot of respect for Yarbrough and his ability to limit power, but that being said, he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, and the Yankees just have such absurd amounts of power that I still give them the edge here. I still want to get to them. Going back to the start of the 2019 season, Yarbrough is only allowed a 140 ISO to right-handed hitters, but he's struck out 20.5%. And I just have trouble expecting guys like Aaron Judge and Luke Voit and Giancarlo Stanton and Torres to be allowed to make contact with the ball and not do damage. So I always give those guys the edge when they're facing pitchers that I don't think have a high likelihood of striking them out. And that's the case here with Yarbrough. So, credit to Yarbrough for being good at limiting quality contact and limiting power, but this obviously isn't a normal team.
No, it is not. Yeah, I don't see how they are not my most exposed stack, especially given the current ownership. Love Judge, love Hicks. I don't know why Stanton is 4,300, but he is. And as we detailed a little bit earlier, price is really meaningless today. You should be able to roster any of these guys. You get somebody like Torres at 6% ownership at $3,900. That is as good of a GPP play as you're going to find. I just want to load up on the Yankees. I respect Ryan Yarbrough as a starter, but what does it matter if it's the Yanks? There's just too much power here. So sign me up for the Yankees. My favorite team to grab. Who's your favorite Yankees bat?
Stanton.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
No, not at all. He's too good. Oh my God. Yeah. Aren't really any major cash options, I guess. Judge, maybe 21% owned, hitting second. 5K price tag shouldn't matter all that much.
Okay, Stanton should be like the first guy in.
I agree.
But yeah, other than that, like, if you can get whatever you can get to is fine, but I would think that like you're going Acuna over Judge in cash.
On the other side, we've got the Rays, middle of the pack in terms of top stack odds, but only a 7% ownership share. Arozarena at 16%, Rousseau at 10%, Brandon Lau at 11%, everybody else in single digits. I think the Rays are being wildly underrepresented in terms of ownership. How do you feel about Tampa?
I think that they're one of the lower probability stacks, but I think that, as usual, people are just bad at range of outcomes type stuff.
Yep.
So I think, like you said, even though they're one of the least appealing offenses here, they don't compare it to teams like the Yankees. It's still a 4-game baseball slate. Like, it's the chances of any of these teams failing is relatively high. The chances of any of them succeeding is, or the chances of even the worst teams having a good game are probably higher than people give it credit for. So when you're getting a lot of ownership going to Jordan Montgomery and not a lot going to the Rays, I do think that there is some appeal there. But again, I don't really plan on full stacking much today. And I don't know how much of Tampa actually stands out as top plays. Like, Randy Arozarena has been getting ownership, and I think he should. He's still only 3,800. He's playing really, really well. But when you can pretty freely roster whoever you want in the outfield, he's still kind of not a top option. Brandon Lau has been absolutely awful. He's expensive. Now you get a lefty-lefty matchup. There's no one guy, I don't think, from Tampa that stands out as a great option at their position. Especially when you consider pinch hit risk too. Like, Hunter Renfroe looks really good.
Yeah.
He's probably not going to get at bat after the 5th inning.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, Renfroe popping pretty nicely, 3% ownership, but, might only hit twice. Is that a problem to you? Maybe yes. Problem's not the right word. How much are you paying attention to it, given how likely it is for most teams to be having that same sort of strategy? Is there anything you're looking for specifically in an individual hitter?
I mean, I don't adjust too much. I think it's factored into, projections and everything enough. But it's the problem is just when you think about, like, outfielders, for example, the likelihood that Renfroe gets pinch hit for is extremely high.
Yeah.
He's not that much cheaper than someone like Stanton, who is not getting pinch hit for. Absolutely, like, no way.
If he does, that you should lose your job immediately.
Right. And, even like looking at the Astros, Kyle Tucker, maybe you prefer the spot for Renfroe. I think it's pretty comparable, but either way, I don't expect Kyle Tucker to be getting pinch hit for. Like, I expect him to get 2 at-bats more than Hunter Renfroe gets.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. It's a tricky thing to try to manage in the playoffs.
Right. It's ownership still matters a lot. Like, if Hunter Renfroe, it's kind of like the way that you think about rostering, like, a number 8 or number 9 hitter versus, like, a number 1 or number 2 hitter in the same lineup. Like, you're going to get fewer at-bats, but at some point the ownership justifies it.
Yeah. Because you start thinning out a player pool on a 4-game slate, and all of a sudden you don't have nearly as many guys as you were originally trying to roster.
Right. Yeah.
Who's your favorite Rays bet?
So the short answer, I guess, would be, like, if I'm playing 1 to 3 lineups, I'm probably just avoiding Renfroe. If I'm playing 150, like, I hope I have some Renfroe just because he could easily homer in his first 2 at-bats.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if you're playing like one lineup, it's a lot easier for you to avoid any potential landmines that are going to get pinch hit for. If you're playing 150, I don't think that there's really a mechanism to avoid that.
Yeah, favorite Rays bat is Arozarena.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else in the Yankees Rays?
No.
Let's close this one out. Dodgers and Padres, I guess. We'll start on the Dodgers side, which is up in the air, but probably Julio Urias. There is no line for this game as of right now. Per the Padres, per Fangraphs, it will be Luis Patino as the long man. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, Adrian Morejon opening, and then Patino as the long man, which I do not know what to make of it because his 3 most recent appearances, he threw 10, 17, and 19 pitches.
Yeah, I don't.
He threw 50 on September 19th.
He's the flat minimum on DraftKings. Does that increase any appeal to you? Because he feels just off the board regardless to me.
The salary itself doesn't really change much because I think I can still just roster whoever I want. I am mildly interested, though, because I think he's good. And if he does go 50 or 60 pitches, he in the conversation for, being able to score those 10 to 12 points that we talked about. It's also obviously a really difficult matchup for him. So I doubt that I really get there. Just kind of mildly interested in 150 lineups because I think there is uncertainty around exactly how deep he can go. And this is one of their top pitching prospects.
What do you want to do with Urias?
I'll take whatever I can get. I expect him to grade out as the highest projected pitcher. But I still, as we said at the top, I don't think he threw 100 pitches a single time this year. He didn't. Normally he's throwing around like 80, 85 pitches. So on this particular slate, that's still appealing, but it is still a tough matchup. So, I'm happy with whatever Urias I get. I'm probably not going out of my way to roster him at the expensive hitters, though.
Okay. Let's slide over to the Dodgers bats. I think that's the better spot to start. They are middle of the pack in terms of top stack odds, sort of the bottom half of the teams that make it to double digits. They are showing up as a little bit over-owned. A little bit of that will have to do with 31% Will Smith, 26% Mookie Betts. I have the Dodgers as my number 3 stack. Obviously, salaries don't matter. That's the good thing for today. What do you want to do with the Dodgers bats against whoever it is that's pitching for the Padres?
The Padres have 13 relief pitchers on their playoff roster.
That's what I would be doing if I were playing like OOTP, but...
it's what they should be doing since they don't have Lamet or Clevenger.
Yeah, right. Because they don't have starters.
Right. That does at least make it so that Patino probably still is only giving you a couple of innings, I would guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the Dodgers go, it's tough because you're going to not get the same matchup probably more than once for any of these guys. Looking, kind of specifically for lefties, there's 5 lefties on the roster for the Padres. Drew Pomeranz threw 10 pitches yesterday, but he didn't pitch on Tuesday, so I assume he's available. None of the other lefties pitched yesterday, so they should be able to match up throughout this game, which can make things a little bit of a problem for the Dodgers. So I don't know that there's one guy that I'm really singling out. It's more so that there is just a lot of power in this lineup and they can do damage. But I don't think it's a super favorable matchup just because of how many arms the Padres have.
I don't like this game today. I don't like that it's last for some strange reason. I feel like whatever I have is going to end up losing because of it.
Right.
It's a terrible feeling to have, but I like Jock. It's 2,900. He's probably going to show up. So
is he even going to start?
Who knows?
Yeah. I was kind of just trying to think through it. I would guess that he doesn't start because, I would guess he does start because chances are the lefty opener is not going to still be in by the time his first at bat comes up.
I do like the layout of the Dodgers lineup going alternating righties and lefties potentially makes it difficult for relief pitchers to come in. You're winning and losing the platoon advantage over and over again. So that's ideal. You don't have.
I'm not sure that entirely matters for Pomeranz, but
sure. It's better than when the Phillies used to run lefty, 3-4-5 out there, and I couldn't have been happier. I was like, yeah, go ahead. Just guarantee that you get Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, and I can't remember who the third lefty was, a lefty at bat in the 6th when it matters. The good old days. Now, are the Phillies still paying Ryan Howard on that ridiculous contract?
I don't know. I know the Orioles are still paying Chris Davis.
I tried to search for Ryan Howard. I typed Ryan Davis. I can't remember if they're still paying him or not. Contracts. Now I just want to know. Ryan Howard, you are my favorite player to hate. By far my favorite player to hate. No, I think it's done. Oh, it ended a while ago. I thought they kicked out a bunch of money into super future season, like Bobby Bonilla style, but not like $1 million for 40 years or whatever it ended up being. All right. From a cash perspective, from a GPP perspective, favorite Dodgers bet.
Seager? I don't know. It's tough. They're all really good plays. I don't know that one of them stands out. Obviously Mookie and Bellinger are really good plays, but you have Stanton, Acuna, whoever else in the outfield. Seager looks really good. Yeah. I think shortstop's pretty weak too. So probably Seager.
Muncy GPP works for me if he sees the whole game. 4,600 dual eligibility, 9% ownership. That feels like a decent spot to try to buy a home run.
Yep, agreed.
Then we go to the Padres side of this one. Padres showing up dead last in the top stack odds, 5%, 8.5% ownership as of right now. Are the Padres 7th? Most of that ownership is going to the 32% owned Fernando Tatis. I understand why that ownership is happening. You trying to stack up the Padres against Urias?
No.
Okay. Are they going underrepresented though? Because they don't appear to be a stack at all outside of Tatis. Like Tatis is making up 32 of 72. So Tatis makes up 44% of all of the Padres ownership. So they're not really being stacked.
That's kind of the thing though. Like Tatis is obviously a really good play. Machado's a really good play. There's nothing wrong with Pham, Myers, Nola, but there are just so many good underpriced, or the salary just doesn't matter, outfielders that you have to run like really, really pure for those guys to end up being the best plays.
Yeah.
So I think it's just another spot where I look at it and I'm just like, okay, why would I rather have Pham, Myers, Nola with Tatis Machado than Gary Sanchez, Giancarlo Stanton, and whoever else?
Now, I hear you there. They feel... Does it change if Urias picks up a lot of ownership?
Not really. Like my interest in Tatis and Machado would increase.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Yeah, 11% owned Machado. If Urias picks up ownership, that could be a very valuable home run if it happens. Favorite cash Padres bat, favorite GPP Padres bat, and then let's get out of here and kick it over to NFL.
None in cash, Machado in tournaments if he's lower owned than Tatis.
None in cash. So not even Tatis?
I think I'd rather go Seager.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I like Machado and GPPs there.
If you go to one in cash, it would be Tatis, though, yeah.
All right, let's sum it all up. Favorite pitching options, favorite hitting options.
Jordan Montgomery. Don't want to pick a name out of a hat. I guess. God. I guess Sanchez.
Okay. Mine's Montgomery and Wright.
Yeah. In a perfect world, I guess it's Montgomery and Urias, but I don't know how easy that'll be. And what was your second question?
Hitting.
Oh, like like individual bats or stacks?
Stacks.
I'm not planning on stacking, but Yankees.
You can give me individual bats if that makes it easier for you.
Okay, yeah. Stanton obviously just completely mispriced. Matt Olson, I like a lot. Kyle Tucker, I like a lot. Mixing and matching, Betts, Seager, Bellinger. But I think the three guys that really just stand out as guys that I would really hope I get a lot of in tournaments are Stanton, Olson, and Tucker.
Okay. Guys, thank you for joining us. 230 people, 60 likes. We're close to 100. If you guys could hit that thumbs up as you walk out the door or digitally walk out the door, that would help us out a ton. We have an infinite amount of content coming out today. Shout out to Yahoo Sports for being our presenting sponsor for this show. You should go check them out. You can, you got CSV edits now. You can see a lot of no management fee contests or even lower management fee contests. It's going to be great for your bankroll. 10 max regularly, smaller contests as well. You can see some single entry stuff. It's a great place to build your bankroll, so I highly recommend going to check it out. Content throughout the day. Hit the thumbs up. I think I'm checking all the boxes. Subscribe to our podcast feed so you can get the audio version of these bad boys. And then tune in to MLB Live Before Lock at 1 o'clock with Jake and Terry as they break it all down. That's about it. Adam, I know you don't have anything else to add. So, Jordan Klein, hit that music.